Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Seek Power Always, where we are accessing that inner wisdom to stand more deeply in your power with a feminine flair. I am so thrilled to introduce to you my special guest today, which is Joyce Buford. She also hosts her own podcast called Second Wind with Joyce, and she focuses on women transitioning through life. This is going to be so great to be talking about as we're standing in our power, because Joyce knows what it's like to, experience loss and transition herself. And she has really focused on her book about effortless happiness, where we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. And she has been personally mentored by Jack Canfield and has coached thousands of people. So Joyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. That's always fun.
It's so great to have you here. We've talked so much about women transitioning and, the fears that come up around that. I want to jump in about, not only we're going to get to your story and your defining moment, but I want to start with, there's a lot of fear in transition that comes up. And I think women have a challenge standing in their power when fear comes into play. So, is that part of the fear and the transition and things that you went into? Why is it that you felt it was important to write your book, and what led you on this path?
Well, I think going through divorce is one of the most fearful things you can do. It's like all of a sudden you make this major decision and your whole world is shaken. I mean, nothing is the same after you go through the actual transition. So, I don't know, in my own journey, I thought it was so powerful and so deep. It just rocked my world. And so I just felt really called to help others move through that time. That's how my podcast came about, Second Wind. It's all about women that are inspiring other women to know there's another side. There's another side. There's always a better side to divorce.
Definitely. Tell us a little bit about your title, about effortless happiness. How is it that title called to you, and how it's like, that sounds like a great concept. How is it that you actually bring it into your life?
Well, I think the place we start with our effortless happiness is by understanding who we are. So effortless happiness is wrapped around identifying those values that are yours and recognize them. Once you recognize them, once you identify them, recognize them, then you incorporate them into your life. In other words, if you know you like this particular thing, if you know you like to hang out with honest people, then hang out with honest people and don't make excuses to hang out with the people that are jerks. In other words, focus your life where you really feel happy. So you have happiness, you're experiencing it. And that's what I think way too many women never even think about: finding their values, identifying their values. So that was it was very important to me when I went through the practice, and that's why I wrote the book.
Right.
So it's actually a workbook to help somebody move through identifying their core values.
Well, and we need to have tools like this, right? Because, unless you're faced with something, you don't really know exactly where to turn and to make that happen. And I wholeheartedly agree with you about having your values, and have your values be a reflection. It's a compass that we use in our life to really show us how we're going to go. Now, the subtitle of your book here, looking at, finding your voice and finally asking for what you want. Asking seems to be some of a tricky thing for women. They're such givers and doers. How do you feel like you can more powerfully stand in your ask and make that happen?
Well, one of the ways is that if you're confident in who you are, if you know your values, that's one way of identifying who you are. So the more you can know about you, the more you can appreciate yourself, the more confidently you're going to stand up and say, I want this in my life. This is how I want my life to look, how I want my life to go. And so once you have that confidence, I think that's the key to standing up and asking for what you want.
Right. Absolutely. Again, talking about, to get to that powerful state and to be more fierce and really stand in who you are, you've got to have some tools that help you more easily move through fear. What are some of those tools for you?
Well, you're going to laugh because some of them are kind of strange, but I do like to put myself in positions that really call up my fear. I'm going to use the one I just went to workshop and I finished, the fire walk. That's a situation, it's not normal, right, that people want to walk on fire, nor can find them. But, you know, Tony Robbins has that at the end of his workshops. This was another lady that I went to her workshop. But it's putting yourself in positions where you have to face fear.
Right.
And what is more fearful than physical harm? So, and it's after you've gone through the walk and you experience all the fear when you look at those embers and you think, oh my. But it's more about, I make the decision to walk across these embers. I know they will not burn me. And I get on the other side and they haven't. And that is, to me, a powerful impact for me.
Right.
Now, we all have to find the one that really calls to our fear. Right. But it's a powerful impact that says, if I can do that, then I can stand up and do a speech for 500 people. I can go ask somebody for a loan. I can go to whatever I want to do. I can go back to college, whatever the desire is.
Right.
It's facing that fear. So I put myself in fearful positions sometimes just to reinforce that I can overcome fear.
Right. This is such a great example and such a great tool. I've done this myself. I've done, you know, the fire walk. I've walked on glass as well, you know, broken glass. I mean, all these different things. And a lot of people think that, you know, that might be crazy. However, you know, even when I was just with the police department, I was constantly putting myself in harm's way, in fear. And I didn't back then look at it as a tool, but I realized that was that, as well as things in personal development type classes. By putting myself in those situations, it was like building a muscle at the gym, right? Once you had one thing under your belt, it's like, okay, I can do that. Then what else can I do? And when you keep pushing the envelope on that, it really does become this mirror of fortifying, you know, your faith and your expansion of what it is that you can do. And I think that's a really great tool to be able to use to get past your fear, because when you are confronted with physical fear, then the emotional fears and, you know, the spiritual and mental fears can be less impactful. Right. And you've got a path that you can walk in with it. And so I think that that's really important. Along the same lines with fear, you talk about shifting your fear around words, right? And how you use your words. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, you can say, if you're preparing to do something that, I'm going to use the example of going on stage. And we know that speaking in front of a large group, small group, whatever, we all face fear. What if I fail? What if I make a mistake? What if I make a fool of myself? And so if we can change that experience is not, I'm fearful, I'm anxious, but I'm excited about being out there. I'm excited about sharing this. It's a different energy around saying, I'm excited, I can do this. It's not, I'm afraid or I'm fearful, or I'm, you know, it's just, I don't know, for me, it changes the whole experience.
Absolutely. Well, and this is a great, you know, exercise for our listeners, you know, to try on the different emotions and notice what's happening in your body. I mean, when you actually get yourself into, if you can even think about a fearful thing, where does that register in your body? Is that something in your gut? Does it feel like in your heart? Are you, you know, what's happening? And then what other positive word that you can say that actually has those same sensations in the same part of your body? And you can start doing what they call transference, right? Where you can start utilizing those in a different way, which is so great, right? It's just you're interpreting in a different way. Same thing happening in our body, but what we're calling it can be something different. So that's how we can kind of get ahead of the fear, where we are actually leading it and we're actually directing it. So they're actually using it as a force to move forward than just keeping us back and having that happen. So I love how you're incorporating this with, you know, with your clients and in yourself in your life. And I'd love to know too, because, you know, a lot of times we think of this as just being in, you know, our work life, but how is it that you plan, you know, life with work and play? Like, how are you putting those things together so that you can be, you know, more powerful in your life and be more intentional with your life?
Well, if I believe that if we're not living the life that we love, then we're not happy. And so for me, I always start with trips because that's one thing I love to do is travel. So when I look at my calendar, I make sure I have 2 trips a year. So I place those first, and then I go back with my work, and I fit my work in around those. So I'm first off starting with excitement about my choices, where I'm going, what I'm doing, and then I plan my work. Work is fun too, but I must have that other side. If we don't put that in first, it may not happen. So,
Right.
because work can be very demanding. So, but we do fill in with both. I love to teach. I love to coach. I love to do all that and do the podcast. But you have to put that side that's easy to cancel in first,
Right.
and realize it does have value.
Absolutely. And are these things, I know you're the proud mother of Chris and Lauren. Is this something that you put your children in as part of that in there? Do they, embrace that as well? And how does that work as a family?
We do not. We occasionally travel together, but not very much. My children are adults, and they pretty well have their own life. And their choices of vacation places are not my choices of vacation places. So I allow them to be who they are, and they allow me to be my crazy self as well. So, but we do spend time locally and, holidays and things. So
Right.
all
But
good.
that's something you plan for, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's part of that, the joy that you have with your family and making that happen. I just had a weekend away, with my youngest daughter, and it's like we got to spend that time together. And I absolutely agree with you. When it comes to our calendar, you've got to put those things that you value and you love and that you actually look forward to, because,
Yes.
there's different times, and we've talked about, I don't believe there's an actual balance in your life. It's, you want to create harmony, right? Where, you can have different streaks of things that are happening where maybe you need to focus more on your business at time, but then there's some harmony where you bring in the flow. And sometimes when you're like, really focusing on those aspects of your business, and you can look and go like, oh, in 3 more weeks is that vacation that's coming up, or, there's that fun getaway. And I don't think it should be just twice a year that you have these great things to look forward to. I would venture to say that that finding of that effortless happiness is the things that you put into your life on a daily basis or on a weekend, or the more frequent type things with that. So, is that part of your formula that you do, is you look at what it looks like in a day as well as a week and long term?
Yes. Those trips are major trips. So they get in there first. They're trips to Jordan and Israel, because I want to go see there, and I've wanted to go for years. So they have to go first because I have to arrange them. But yes, I think life has to be continuous, full of good things. I enjoy music. I'm always attending music events as well as singing in choirs. So yeah, I think those are always important to incorporate. That's what makes life worth living, really, for me.
Absolutely. Now, Joyce, I know that you specialize particularly in loss. There's a lot of transitions in life, but loss is one of the things that you specialize in the most. For a woman that's listening today who is in a place of loss and, literally not really knowing what to do different. There's life as it was, and now there's been a big transition and there's loss, and she's just in it.
Yeah.
What would you speak to her about today? What is it that she needs to hear?
Well, I really want her to know there is joy and new life after the loss. Yes, she must go through the grieving stages. Now we're talking about the loss of a marriage or the loss of a mate, and which is both the losses of mates, but in a different way. And so the loss, she has to be willing to go through it. Just like when I had cancer, I forgot all about the loss part, and it took a toll on me afterwards. Now that to me is a loss as well. So everyone will go through that loss phase differently. There is no rule Everybody is unique to themselves. And so the main thing is I want them to know they can create a whole new them. They can go in different directions from where they've been, and most of them will. And it's going to be fun and glorious on the other side. So it's something to look for, not fear and stay forever in. It's not their only story. They will create another story.
Right.
It's full of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that because, sometimes when, we know only what we know and what has been our path up until this point, we maybe don't see the next trajectory or what that looks like.
Right.
And with that, I know you look at, that there's defining moments, and those defining moments, I'm not sure if that happens at the moment of loss. That could maybe happen right before, right after. I mean, there's different times that could really, be part of what would be a defining moment. Share a little bit about your defining moment and how that kind of fueled you on your path and how that can support our listeners.
Well, my defining moment was really realizing that my marriage was over. And I found it out in a very unusual way, in that my husband at that time had gone off to a retreat, and he came home, and there were some results of his visit. And so there was a drawing on the paper and that he had put up in his study, and it talked about lines. There was my son's line, and it went all the way to the right. My daughter's line, it went all the way to the right. And then my line stopped in the middle on the piece of the paper. To me, that meant change. And it meant change in the marriage. And I don't know if I've explained that very clearly, Diane, but for me, that was a defining moment, because it was like, life is changing for you.
Right.
And it also shared the fact that he was also of the same mind. So to me, it changed everything. And
Right.
from then I knew my life was changing.
Right.
So I think we all have defining moments, and we all have multiple defining moments.
Right.
But some are more memorable. Some hit us harder. Some shake our world. And it's those defining moments that shake our world that we have our most growth from.
Right.
And so look at me today. I mean, I'm living a life of what I really was meant to do, which is teach, music, travel. It's all of that. Not to mean I don't love my children, because I certainly do. Yeah. And they're an important part of my life. But I would not have been propelled into this career had I not experienced divorce.
Right. Well, and I think what's so powerful about your defining moment is that as powerful it was and as impactful it was actually something very simple. Right. I mean, it was like a light, a black and white, literally, by seeing a line that became a reflection of what this is, which, unless you were conscious of that being the triggering thing, that could actually be lost by some people, where you could have just looked at it and kept going and not really think as much about it, or start having the internal subconscious reactions of that, of feeling sadness or out of sorts or things working, and not necessarily tying it to that moment. So I think it's important for women who are going through something, who maybe have something, what maybe would even seem offhandedly, and then they're having reactions that are shifting their life in powerful ways, and they actually may even feel some guilt or shame to go, why did I let this, quote, simple thing throw me off so much the track? Because it can be something that simple that is really just an indicator of life is shifting, life is changing. And just like we were looking at the emotions that change our fear, the emotions also change our experience of going through the loss and the change and the things that are happening as well. So I think that's something that's so powerful about your story.
Yeah, thanks. But there is also, we go through, women particularly will feel the discomfort, feel the sadness of the situation. And it was the impactful of seeing that visual on the wall that really kind of said, I'm on, okay, this is it. This is my defining moment. This says that sadness I've been living in has got to stop.
Right.
And so, You're right. Women will overlook it. We'll stay in. We are so hard. We are tough. We will stay there as long as we can.
Right, right. Well, and that's where we really, and this is part of where this podcast came from about, seeking power always. We have that within us at all times. No matter what's happening outside, we have that internal compass that we can always check in because, when we reflect back, there seems to be always something, whether it's that little intuition, twitch, whether it was something in our heart, in our stomach, something in our mind, something triggered us because we are that powerful. We have that awareness. It's just whether or not we listen to it and we step into it and have that happen. So I think it's important to have this conversation so that women start becoming more aware of how they are being and how they're showing up in the world and what that looks like. And standing in their power doesn't mean that they're giving up being, feminine. It actually is power with a feminine flair. I love that kind of balance that can be part of it. It's what that is for you and defining that for yourself.
Right.
So I love that so much. And I think part of defining who you are comes to your space. And one of the things I always like to ask my guests is, because I think there's something powerful about what we create in our space, is what is your favorite room in your home and why?
I particularly like in this home the openness of it. It allows me to see the world outside, bring it inside. It also is filled with beautiful artifacts that give me pleasure. That is one of my values. I love being around beauty. And so I'd have to say it's my living room because it's big and it's got favorite things of mine in it.
Oh, I love that. I think that, what you have in your space really, is part of your happiness quotient, right? About that effortless happiness when you walk through a certain room and something actually brings a smile to your face, that's created a space that is actually part of your experience of your day. And I think that is powerful in itself. So Joyce, I know people are going to want to connect with you deeply. And I know that you've got something to share with our audience. Would you like to give that?
Yes, I would like to offer to anybody that would like to visit with me a strategy session that they can, and I'm going to give them my telephone number. It's 903-520-0418. I would love for them to call me and I would share a 30-minute strategy session with them. So if they want to just check me out, they can go to Second Wind with Joyce, which is my podcast. I also have a Facebook page. And then also Joyce Buford Empowers is my website. So you can learn more about Joyce and what she's doing there.
Perfect. That sounds good. And we will also put in the show notes, ways to get connected with you and to have that on there, which will be really, really, really great. So I know we're going to be rounding off here. We could probably talk all afternoon. Is there any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, Diane, I so respect you. I loved having you on my podcast as well. And you are everything that we say a woman in power is. I mean, you're following your passion. You've lived such an interesting life. And I'm thrilled that you asked me to be on your show so that I could be part of your show. And it's just I'm so happy we met. Really. It was a great pleasure. Yeah. Great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. It's so great to have you here. And I love having women on the show who are just so courageous, like you have to share, your path. A lot of times women will go internal and not want to share, the parts that aren't so shiny, right? But that is part of why we're here, right? Is to have that aspect with it. So I appreciate you being open and you stepping into your gifts and sharing your story and being there for everyone. So definitely to our listeners, connect with Joyce, check her out, take her up on her call to really, especially if you're in transition, to really connect with her with that. And then, as always, we look here at, what is what is happening in your life, what is supporting you, what's not supporting you. And so I always like to give here at the end of my show, my quiz, the Life Reset quiz. You can go to liferesetquiz.com. That will also be in the show notes. That gives you a pulse in just a few moments to know what's working and what's not working in your life. So we're giving you all of these tools to be able to support you. And, whether you're seeing this maybe on Facebook or, on iTunes or, there's a lot of different places you might see this, please put into the comments, what is it, one takeaway that you had here, and, tag both Joyce and myself if you've got a question for us. We're here to support you. So definitely engage with us. If you know someone that that this would speak to their heart, please share it. We're all here, to help each other out and to get our messages out. And that's how we get to step into our voice, is to share it with each other. So please share this podcast. Please connect with us. And remember, as always, live your spa life. Seek that power within you, because you have it. Thank you so much for enjoying your time here with us, as we've enjoyed you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye for
you,
now.
Diane.
Mhm.